Hello, guys. Good afternoon. This is Professor Daniel speaking. Um, I'm making this video to discuss, to talk, to explain a little bit about four important topics that are part of our course. The first one is related to Brazilian logistics and infrastructure. The second one is related to Brazilian soybeans and corn supply chains. Okay. Third one is related to Brazilian farming structure. Okay. And lastly, a little bit about how Brazil deals with biofuels production. Okay. I'm gonna try to approach those four topics in the following minutes, promising that at least I will attempt uh, not to take too much time from you. Okay, so let me display my screen here. I prepared this presentation. Okay, I named this presentation as the breakthroughs for agribusiness in Brazil. Okay. Uh, this is the agenda, the formal agenda of this presentation, but of course I will go beyond this agenda to touch on Brazilian biofuels production, to touch on Brazilian farming structure, and so on. Okay. Well, first, how Brazil looked like in terms of soybean production. Brazil is today the most important soybean producer in the world. If you see this graph and this table here, you're going to see United States in first place with 123 million tons of production per year, and Brazil in second place. But this is related to 2018 and 2019 crop year. If we consider the 2019, 2020, and 2021 crop year, Brazil is already appearing as first place. Okay, Argentina is the third place, China, India, Paraguay, Canada, and others. You will observe here that Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil, three South American countries, are within the major soybean producers in the globe. Okay. This chart shows how Brazilian soybean production has grown. Brazilian soybean and corn production has grown over the years. If we consider data from 1993, 1994 crop year, you're going to see a expressive, dramatic growth towards the current moment. Okay, and how Brazil has improved its grains production that way, based on two main factors. First factor is related to productivity. Brazil increased its capacity to produce per unit of area, tons or bags per hectare. Okay, using technology, using chemical products, using better seeds, using fertilizers, machinery, etc. Okay, all of these brought productivity over the years. The second aspect that made Brazil to have this growth is, of course, expansion in terms of area. Okay, that's right. I will spend some time on this map because we have several important informations and insights that you can collect from it. Okay, this map shows soybean production by state in Brazil. Soybean production by state in Brazil. And you will remark that the most important producer state in Brazil is Mato Grosso, which is located in the heart of Brazil. Mato Grosso state is located in what we name Cerrado region, the Brazilian savanna, as I explained in other video on South American biomes for you. Okay. Mato Grosso had a important and a expressive growth in terms of production over the years. Okay, not only Mato Grosso but all the Cerrados states. Okay, the states that are located in the Brazilian Cerrado, all of them had a expressive growth in terms of production over the years. The explanation for that, as I said in the last slide, is related to technology and area expansion. Originally, Brazilian soybeans were produced in the south region of Brazil. So during the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, soybean in Brazil was produced by small farmers. Okay, generally people that came from Europe or the descendants of those migrants. Okay, and they used to grow soybeans in small farmlands. Okay, the soil and the weather in this region are favorable to high yields of soybean production. Okay, but during the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, we saw a movement from farmers from south of Brazil to Cerrado, placed it in the central part of Brazil. At that time, people said that Cerrado would be a very good region for production because the region was, you could find a huge amount of land in a flat way, which make it available, make it feasible the production in large scale using machinery. Okay, and Embrapa, which is actually the public company that takes care of agricultural research, had developed some types of soybeans that could be adapted to the weather found in this region, weather and soil. Okay, so this brought the interest from those guys here in south of Brazil to expand area, because I mean, in this region they produced in small pieces of land. Selling this land, this small piece of land, this small farmland, and getting the money from the sale, they could buy huge areas in the central part of Brazil to produce soybean. Of course, there was an important risk involved, as nobody produced soybeans there at that time yet. Okay, and in addition, they had to deforest the typical vegetation of that region. Okay, so they had two challenges. Many South farmers took that challenge and sold everything that they had in the South and decided to take the risk in the central part of Brazil, mostly in Mato Grosso. And they've been successful. Today, we have huge farms in Mato Grosso, in Goiás as well, but mostly in Mato Grosso state, huge farms owned by one individual or one family. Okay, generally they are owned by the pioneer, the person that left south of Brazil to go to Mato Grosso, or to the second generation, the children. Okay. Um, this type of movement, if on one hand it brought uh, economic development to the region, because this region had nothing in the 70s, in the 80s, and today this is a very prosperous region because of agriculture. You have employment there, you have money circulating, an active economy. Okay. On the other hand, there are concerns related to the continuing expansion of soybeans production towards north of Brazil. Let me erase here. Towards of Brazil. North. Going towards north of Brazil means going to the Amazon rainforest. It is a fact that Amazon rainforest, originally speaking, they came until the southern part of Mato Grosso, part of Goiás, Tocantins, etc. This part of the forest, original forest, is already gone. This is a fact. Nobody can deny that. Today, Brazil has public policies to protect the expansion towards north. And also the market, as I explained to you in some of our prior classes, the market also has its own mechanisms to protect the Amazon rainforest. Okay, but this is a permanent concern. That's right. How does soybean supply chain work in Brazil? Before talking about soybean supply chain, just one additional comment on soybean production. I just talked about soybean production, but when we talk about corn production is pretty much done in the same regions as soybeans. What happens here in Brazil? We have the rainy season. When is the rainy season in this Cerrado region? The rainy season generally is from October to January in some regions. Okay, in the Cerrado region, this is much more from October, November, December, January, and maybe the beginning of February. Okay, so soybeans are planted during the rainy months. Okay. In Cerrado, the rains, they start to stop, they start to get scarced end of January, beginning of February. So as soon as the soybean is harvested in the Brazilian Cerrado, farmers come immediately after the harvest. I mean, immediately, in fact, they harvest with one machine, and generally they come with other machine planting the corn just behind the harvest machine, the harvest tractor. Okay, they use the last rains of end of January, beginning of February to plant the corn. Okay, and then corn can develop and come up from the soil just with this final rain. Okay, then it goes March, April, May, and is and in June when corn harvest starts. Generally, corn harvest in Brazil, in the Brazilian Cerrado, starts end of May and is at full pace in June. Okay, so there is an important relation between soybeans and corn. Of course, we also have corn plantation, corn planting using this rainy period. For example, here in the western part of Santa Catarina state, here in the southwest part of Paraná, here in the northern northwest part of Rio Grande do Sul, here, that region here, this region here has an important swine poultry production, which corn is one of the most important raw materials. So farmers use that rainy period to plant corn to sell to those industries. Okay, but the biggest stake of corn production is made, as I explained it, as a sequence just after the soybean harvest. Okay, the soybean supply chain. How does it work? This is the model that works for Brazil, for Argentina, for Paraguay, for the United States, whatever. Where we have soybean production, mostly in the Americas, the supply chain is pretty much like that. What we have the first and I would say most important player, the farmer. This guy plants the soybean. Generally, the farmer sells its soybean to someone that could be a crushing facility, the industry that will crush the soybeans into soybean meal, which is 80% of the mass of a grain of soybean, and crude soybean oil, which is 19% more or less of the mass of a soybean grain. The soybean meal becomes animal protein. The soybean meal becomes animal protein. Why? Because soybean meal is an important ingredient for feed that is used in the animal production. Okay, this protein goes to the fork of the families. The crude soybean oil is treated in industrial process and may become bottled soybean oil or biodiesel. Okay, both of them, of course, go to family consumption. Here we have, this is the general supply chain flow. Okay, here in this relation between the soybean producer and crushing facility, we have some specificities. Okay, this crushing facility can be in the country that produces the soybean or abroad. Let's take two examples, Brazil and Argentina. Argentina is one of the most important soybean meal and soybean oil exporters. Argentina has a policy that incentivizes, that motivate the big traders to invest in crushing facilities in that country to manufacture the raw material, soybean, in Argentina. Of course, exporting value-added products, soybean meal or crude soybean oil. In Brazil is likely different because we don't have a important incentive from the government, from the taxation structure to motivate those guys to invest in crushing facilities in Brazil. Here in Brazil, it is cheaper to export the raw material, to export the soybean to the final destination, and there, in order to have this raw material to be crushed in the destination. Talking about the relation between Brazil and China, Brazil is one of the most important soybean exporters to China. China bought 85% of Brazilian exports last crop year. This soybean goes to the soybean crushing facilities in China. So the value addition is made in China. Okay, this is because, as I said, because of a local Brazilian structural issue that is hard to solve. Okay, soybeans, as I said, soybeans in natura are exported with no taxation. While when you crush the soybean here in Brazil and sell the soybean meal or soybean oil, you have taxation. This is clear that should be changed, but when politicians, when the congressmen and congresswomen try to discuss this subject, the lobby related to the farmers work hard to avoid this. Why? Because at the end of the day, this is good to the farmers. This is good for farmers because they have more demand for their soybeans. If you start taxing raw material to be exported instead of the value-added products, those guys would have a lower number of buyers for their products. Ultimately, they could see a decrease in price. Okay, this is the situation in Brazil. It will probably change somewhere in the near future, but today it is as it is. And who are the main traders? The guys that move soybeans from Americas to, for example, China, which is one of the most important importers. Those guys here: ADM, Bunge, Cargill, Dreyfus, COFCO. Sorry, my Chinese colleagues, if I'm not pronouncing correctly. Okay, and we have several others like Nova Agri, which is part of Toyota Group. Okay, we have Glencore, we have Gavlan, we have CJ from South Korea. We have several smaller traders that play this role. Those guys here are the main ones in Brazil. Okay. All right. Who are the main Brazilian soybean importers? First, China. 2018-2019 crop year, 83 million tons out of 117 million tons production. It's expressive. It's huge. European Union, 15 million. Argentina, 6 million. Mexico, sorry. Egypt, Japan, Thailand, and others. Okay, so China is key, is very important, it's critical for Brazilian agribusiness. It's key, it's critical. And of course, Brazil is also key and critical for China as an important raw material supplier. Talking a little bit about logistics, okay? When we are discussing agricultural commodity supply chains, we need to consider two types of logistics, mostly in a country of the size and dimensions of Brazil. We have the inland logistics between farmer and port, And we have maritime logistics between port and important countries. Let's focus on these logistics here, okay? The inland logistics, okay? Where, by the way, we have the main breakthroughs. We as country, Brazil as a country, is improving its logistics, which was terrible couple of years ago. Okay, let's see why. First, let's just talk in a very general way on the maritime logistics between Brazil and the rest of the world. Okay. So here we see the main maritime routes from Brazil to the main grains importers, okay, grains importers, sourced from USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, okay. You see that the main source of soybeans, of grains in Brazil is Mato Grosso state, as we've seen just in the beginning of this presentation. It is in the heart of the Brazilian savanna of Cerrado region, okay. The soybeans that are in this region need to be driven long, a number of kilometers inland before getting to a port, if it goes to southern ports. Okay, the average distance between Mato Grosso and Santos or Paranaguá ports, which is two of the most important Brazilian soybeans exporting ports, is roughly 2,000 kilometers. Okay. Although the distance and although I mean in addition to the southern ports, we have in Brazil an alternative of logistics channel. Okay, it is brand new. It would have 5 or 6 years. Okay, and just now this logistics channel is really working well, which is moving the grains towards north of Brazil through the Amazon rainforest, using the rivers of the Amazon region to move the grains. Okay, as I said, 10 years ago, this logistics channel was not available. There wasn't this logistics channel. Okay, and over these last years, this logistics channel was created and was improved, getting to the current moment in which we have a real northern logistics channel using the northern rivers network. Okay. Well, the main destinations are the Asian countries in general, China mostly, okay, Europe, okay, Western Europe, Middle East, and a little bit to North America. But no doubt that Asian markets are the main markets for Brazilian commodities. Okay. All right. And how about the inland logistics? When we talk about inland logistics, we are talking about the main challenge for Brazil. If you see here in 2017, USDA projected that Brazil logistics matrix was 61% based on highways, 21% on railways, 14% in waterways, and 5% in others. USDA is forecasting for 2020 to 2025 a decrease of 31% in the highways dependence and an increase of 14% in the railways dependence, an increase of 15% in the dependence of waterways, and an increase of 1% dependence of other logistics channels. Okay, I see this scenario established by USDA very likely to happen. Okay, very likely to happen. I will explain in details why. See, if we consider 10 years ago, we didn't have almost nothing that is presented in this part of the map, what we say Northern Arc Corridor. 10 years ago, the Northern Arc logistics corridors were nothing. There wasn't that. Brazilian soybeans were exported only via the traditional corridor, the Southern logistics corridor, and basically moving over trucks until the ports. So we had important improvements in logistics of that region and also in the logistics of that region. I will explain why. Talking about the traditional corridor, the improvements that we had here were two. First, the performance of the port. Mostly the three most important ports, Santos, Paranaguá, and Rio Grande. Those three ports were modernized, they got updated, and they started to perform much better than they performed in the past. In the past, we had horrible truck lineups in the roads because ports were incapable to ship the beans in the same pace that trucks arrived to the port. It was terrible. And this situation was over. The situation was over. The other important aspect related to the traditional corridor is related to the implementation or the modernization or the concession, the concession of the public railways that were unused to the private sector. Brazil made this movement in the last years, and today we have important railways corridor linking the central part of Brazil where the beans, where the grains are produced, to the main ports. I would like to mention here two important railways corridor. This one linking south of Mato Grosso state to Santos Port. This is a very useful logistics corridor, giving speed and efficiency to the logistics of grains coming from Mato Grosso, from the central part of Brazil to Santos Port. And we also have this important corridor here in Paraná State, that these two ones here, that give to Paraná production also an important logistic alternative to Paranaguá port. Okay, but the main transformation was made here, was made in the Northern Arc Corridor. Brazil started to use the rivers to move grains to the international markets. So what's happening here? We have the reactivation and the pavimentation of BR-163, BR-163, one important road that links the central part of Mato Grosso to the borders of Rio of Tapajós River. Okay, so trucks may go from central and northern part of Mato Grosso state until Itaituba port, Itaituba region actually, sorry, Itaituba region. Arriving there, the trucks are unloaded in silos and warehouses, and the grains are after that loaded again in barges or even in vessels, okay? And this way they go to the export market. Same thing happening here in the Madeira River. This one is Madeira River, this one is Tapajós River, and this one is Amazon River. In Madeira River, we have the same thing, grains coming from the central part of Mato Grosso in trucks, arriving in Porto Velho city, unloading in silos and warehouses, reloaded in barges, and going abroad, okay? This brought a very important competitive scenario to Brazilian soybeans, okay? Because today we have two important logistics corridors that are getting much more and more competitive. We have the Northern Arc corridor and we have the traditional corridor or Southern corridor with the usage of railways, okay? Who gets the advantage of that? Two main actors. First, Brazilian society, because we can sell beans more expensively, okay? Because we have a lower logistics cost. Buyer is available to buy more from Brazil because they can remunerate better the farmers. And the second actor that gets advantage of this are the farmers, is the farmer. Okay, farmers are receiving more money for their beans because when a Chinese buyer is buying from Brazil, they don't need to discount too much the price related to logistics costs because logistics costs have decreased over the years. So at the end of the day, you have more money going to the farmer's pocket. Okay. This is the scenario, the major scenario of Brazilian logistics. I'm using soybeans and corn logistics to illustrate, but this is the scenario, the transformation that logistics in Brazil in general is passing through. Okay. And it is because of that, because of what I've just said, that I believe in this scenario projected by the United States Department of Agriculture. Okay. All right. Here we have two maps just showing the distance between Sorriso, which is in the northern part of Mato Grosso state, and the two main southern ports, Paranaguá state and Paranaguá port and Santos port. Okay. And well, here a little bit about Brazilian rivers. We have discussed these in the past, so I will just pass this slide. Okay, and here scenarios that used to happen in the past in that road here. When the road was not paved yet, we used to see, guys, such type of drama. Today is much more uncommon. We have the situation, of course, in other roads in Brazil, but it was very dramatic in this connection between the central part of Brazil and the rivers, the port rivers in the northern of Brazil. Today, this is not an issue anymore, okay, at least in this logistics channel. Here are some concluding remarks, but before going through these concluding remarks, I would like to mention just a couple of words about Brazilian biofuels production. Okay? And for that, I will go back to Brazilian map. We have the production of two important biofuels production in Brazil. We have the production, of two important biofuels in Brazil. First, ethanol, and second, biodiesel. Ethanol is coming from sugarcane. It is a traditional sugarcane industry, is traditional in Brazil, and ethanol production is very traditional in Brazil. The biggest part of the vehicles, cars that are driven in Brazil, they are fueled by gasoline and ethanol. You can choose. We name this flex fuel, flex engines, actually. You can choose. You can go to the gas station and choose to fulfill with gasoline or fulfill with ethanol, or to blend if you like. Ethanol, as I said, is a very well established industry in Brazil. Okay. Sugarcane is produced in São Paulo state mostly, but also in Goiás state, in southern part of Goiás state, and in the Brazilian northeast coast. This production has basically the same age of Brazil. When Brazil was visited for the first time by Europeans, roughly 500 years ago, they just started to produce sugarcane in that region, and this production remains. Okay, it is a low yield production, very hard to manage because of the type of terrain we have there. We have a very mountains, irregular terrain. It's not flat, which is exactly the opposite of São Paulo state and Goiás state, where we have a very flat terrain that gives the opportunity to apply, to use high level of technology and machinery. Okay. And the second important biofuel production that we have in Brazil is just exactly the biofuel that comes from soybean oil, which is biodiesel. Okay. Biodiesel is a younger industry in comparison with ethanol industry, but it is also today a important industry for Brazil. Biodiesel industry is based on government mandate. I mean, government determines, tell the percentage of biodiesel that should be blended to the diesel. Okay, and this mandate need to be fulfilled by the fuel blenders. Okay, this is where it comes the biodiesel demand in Brazil. So all the biodiesel produced in Brazil is sold in Brazil to serve the mandatory blending. Okay, today mandatory blending in Brazil is at 10%, which means that from the total diesel that is sold and used in trucks, trains, etc., 10% is not fossil diesel, but biodiesel. Blenders need to blend 10% of biodiesel into diesel before selling this product, mixed, blended, to the gas stations. in the ethanol, we have something similar, but not that straight. In the ethanol case, ethanol is also, you can, in Brazil, you can buy 100% of ethanol in the gas station to fuel your car, or you can buy gasoline. But this gasoline also has a percentage of ethanol. In other words, the gasoline that is sold in the gas stations in Brazil is not 100% gasoline. It is a blend between gasoline and ethanol. Okay, this blend varies from 20 to 30%, more or less. Okay. Well, guys. As concluding remarks, we have here Brazil agribusiness is known for its competitiveness in terms of productivity and cost in the agricultural production level. It is true. Okay, and today we are seeing also a development on the Brazilian logistics, inland Brazilian logistics, which is giving to the Brazilian soybean production a more relevant role in the international market for that product. Okay, Brazil is getting more and more competitive in selling commodities to the world because of the improvement in internal logistics. With BR-163, that road that links Mato Grosso to the northern river ports in Amazon rainforest, duly paved, the Brazilian agribusiness is starting to enjoy in a full manner, its northern logistics. So after the pavement, we started to use all the potential of northern logistics. Of course, we have other challenges that I didn't highlight in this presentation, but it is important to mention, for example, warehousing capacity. Brazil has an important lack of warehousing storage, grain storage capacity. Okay, Brazil is improving that, but in a slower way than it was with the development of logistics channels. Okay. Here an example on the warehousing gap. Those two pictures were taken in Mato Grosso state. This one is not mine, but this one is. Okay. This picture is very interesting because we can see this is a peel of corn that is being put on the ground. You see that the warehouses that are not small, probably they are full of soybeans, and as they don't have, this farm doesn't have more warehousing capacity, they are simply putting the corn on the ground. They are taking advantage of the weather. In the central part of Brazil, there is no rain between May and October. So the risk of getting this product unperishable, the risk of getting this product in a bad quality is small because you don't have moisture in that region. Okay. Anyway, this is a problem because the operation to collect the grain from here and to put this into a truck is terrible and expensive. Okay. In addition to that, it's not possible to collect all the grain that is put on the ground. You always will leave grain on the ground. This means loss or waste. Okay, And just to you to have an idea on how much we're talking about here, those are trucks. All of them, they carry grains, soybeans or corn. Okay, one truck like that have from 6 to 9 axes. Okay, and they are capable to carry more or less 50 tons of grains, 50 tons of grains. Having this measure in mind, you can imagine how much grain is put here. Okay. If we consider that a ton of corn today is priced at $600, $100 per ton, $100 per ton, and if we consider that we have here 20,000 tons of corn, more or less, you can imagine how much money we have put on the ground in that farm. 200,000 tons times $100 per ton. You can imagine how much money we are talking about. Here is the same thing, but this is another perspective of a different farm. Okay. Very dramatic, this situation as well. Well, guys, this is what I would like to present to you. I appreciate your attention, and any doubt, any question, just let me know. Bye-bye and see you.